This episode is powered by Act Now Education. Go to www.actnoweducation.com for free comprehensive educational resources and opportunities for active duty, veterans, military spouses, and children.
Great to have options. If you want a service academy, apply to every service academy. Don't limit yourself to just West Point because your dad went to West Point. Apply to Naval Academy, apply to Air Force Academy, apply for national scholarships, apply for Navy and Air Force scholarships. So when the time comes, you have all this on the table to say, then you really got to narrow down your research to say, what is it I really want?
Warriors, fall in. It's time for formation. So today we have a very special guest. This is a very special episode for parents, guardians, and future leaders who wish to take the military into consideration and also complete college at the same time. I'm talking about the prestigious Army ROTC program, which is available in many colleges all across the United States. And I find it very, very, upsetting and strange that I find out many times that many parents, many students don't know much about the ROTC program. So I have a good friend of mine who is a former coworker who was also deployed with me in 2004, 2005 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in Mosul, Iraq. At the time, I was just a lowly second lieutenant in a nearby Transportation Platoon, and she was the executive officer of her respective maintenance company. So today, I'm very proud to say that our guest has managed to climb the Army ranks and is now a lieutenant colonel and is serving as a professor of military science at San Diego State University, where she mentors, guides, and builds our future military leaders. I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Michelle Parlette to the Morning Formation Podcast. Thank you for joining us today, ma'am.
Thank you, Keo. Great to be here. Great to see you again. It's been a while, so just happy to be here and talk about ROTC and all the great opportunities we have.
It's going to be really hard not to talk about the good old days. That was, 18 years ago, right?
That's right. Yes, it was the good old days.
So I'll tell you what.
Good times.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot in that 1 year of deployment that we spent together. You were in a different company than I was. At the time, I was just 24 years old, fresh out of college, fresh out of officer basic course. And I talk a lot about my perspectives, during that time and the lead up to that. But what was that lead up for that deployment like for you at an early age?
It was a little bit stressful. So we were at Schofield Barracks at the time in the maintenance company, and unlike today, you look around in the formation and everyone's wearing a deployment patch on their right shoulder. But at that time, there weren't a lot of NCOs or officers that had deployments behind their belts, and so we were all new to the experience, all new to all the train up leading up to the deployment and getting our vehicles ready. And we didn't know what to expect. And we didn't have a lot of people to tell us what to expect in a deployment to Iraq. But that also made us a lot stronger and a more cohesive unit because we had to go through all of that together. And everybody, again, was brand new to it. So we still stay in contact with all the soldiers for 536 Maintenance Company. We have a Facebook page, and just yesterday I saw a picture of 3 soldiers from that unit that got together in Florida. So it's really great. It was a tight-knit group. Out of my 5 deployments, that was definitely the most memorable and one of the best experiences I had in the Army because of how close we were as a unit.
Yeah, I could certainly tell that the 536 had a huge cohesive family, because after the deployment, I actually went to that same company as well and worked. And I could tell you guys had over time prior to deploying had developed that closeness with each other through training and had that, like I said, had that cohesive unit. But, Michelle, I was looking at and by the way, I hope you don't mind if I call you Michelle versus Lieutenant Colonel Parlette.
Yes, please do.
I'm very proud of you, by the way, for, here we are 18 years later, and you are where you are right now. And not only you are where you are, but you're changing lives. So I'm very proud of you and your position that you're doing right now. I noticed, and I found it very, very fascinating. Would you mind telling our audience out there how you started out in the military, how this all began for you?
Sure. Yep. I grew up in Southern Oregon in a small town, and I'd really never traveled outside of Oregon. All of our family vacations were in Oregon, camping and fishing and whatnot, hiking. So I really wanted to get out there and see the world. Was one of my primary reasons for joining the military. I also wanted to go to college, and I knew I didn't have, money to do that, at least outside of the state. So those were kind of my two primary reasons. My dad was in the Army for 3 years. He retired out of the Navy Reserves. So he talked about West Point, even though he didn't go there. He knew it was, in New York, so across the country, in a premier education. So I applied for West Point out of high school, and I got disqualified medically for asthma and my eyes not being correctable to 2020. So I was advised to go ahead and go to college somewhere for a year, take some general ed stuff, reapply, and try to get a waiver for those medical conditions. So I went to Southern Oregon University for a year. I reapplied. I got the waiver for asthma, but not for the eyes not correctable to 2020. So I was, pretty bummed out because I still didn't have, a way to pay for college and get out of the state and do some adventures, activities. So went to the local recruiter, and my dad said, unless you want to be stuck on a ship, don't go to the Navy recruiter, which, I had no interest in that. So I went to the Air Force first. Didn't know if I'd like the military, so I only wanted to do a couple years. And the Air Force wanted 6 out of me. And I said, no, thank you. So then I went next door to the Army, and they had just started 2-year enlistments with college funds. And so I enlisted as a light build vehicle mechanic. So that's kind of how I got into the military initially. From there, I went to Fort Hood. I loved the Army. But when my time was, my 2 years was up or close to being up, I did not want to be a mechanic anymore. I wanted to do something a little more, more adventurous, I guess, and more interesting. I was tired of being stuck, on the pavement under a Humvee for hours at a time in the motor pool and in the hot Texas sun. So I was getting out. And then my commander came to me and said, we have these green to gold hip pocket scholarships that the commander can submit you for. So I said, well, let me look into that. I applied for a 4-year scholarship. Didn't think I would get it because it was a 17% acceptance rate the year prior for those 4-year scholarships. So I was about 2 months out from ETSing, and they said, you're approved. You're going to ROTC. So that it was a scramble to get to University of Portland, where I ultimately did 4 years of ROTC and commissioned into the Quartermaster Corps from.
Wow. So you kind of ran into some roadblocks and some obstacles, and you just kind of kept going, right? And just learned, I guess, it's really important sometimes to talk to people and just to learn new things. I can't tell you how many times I've just had casual conversations with people, and then they're like, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was even an option for me. And so that sounds like that's kind of how you navigated your entire career. And you're very fortunate to have a company leadership, a commander specifically that even offered that to you. So that's absolutely amazing. And I think over the years, I've heard so many stories about people running into roadblocks, people running into obstacles. And I think it's really important to highlight that there are other paths to get to where you want to go. There's OCS, there's ROTC, there's always the military academies out there. So it's important for you to look at all your options. And Michelle, moving forward from that, over the years, can you talk about some of your career highlights? I know you deployed it to Afghanistan in 2008. Would you mind talking about how that compared to your Iraq deployment?
It was a lot different. Right at that time, it was a little later in the wars we had over there in the Middle East, and almost everybody had deployed at that time. And so there wasn't as extensive of train up like we had in 2003 and 4 to go to Iraq. And so there wasn't as much cohesion, I would say, within the units that I deployed to Afghanistan with. It was obviously I was a higher rank then, and so my responsibilities were a little bit different. Mostly office work in my later deployments to Afghanistan versus convoys in Iraq. And again, those experiences like convoys and being exposed to a lot of danger every day, not to say there wasn't on the other deployments, but being on the road in Iraq just brought the team together even more. And when you're stuck in an office doing, office work essentially at the higher ranks, you don't have that interaction with soldiers as much. You don't have that cohesion that builds in the unit. So it's much different. I love my Iraq deployment more than any other deployment I've been on. And that was one of the main reasons for that.
Yeah, that's, man, you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about being out on the road and being around danger. I mean, before we jump into talking about ROTC, I just got to know your perspective on this. Did you, when at the time when you were deployed, because I want people to know in 2004, 2005, this is right after Fallujah. This is a very intense time in Iraq and very, very dangerous time in Iraq. And Michelle's company did different routes than I did. So we have slightly different experiences when it comes to the whole convoy operations. But 536 certainly dealt with their fair share of I guess danger and intense issues out on the road. I know you guys have gotten hit with IEDs several times. At the time, did you even think about or realize like what we were doing and it being like, I mean, I look back at it now.
Yeah.
Sorry. I look back at it now and I think, wow, like that's crazy. Like some of the things that I did even was like insane, that I was 24 years old and literally just 50-50 things could go south at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think at the time when you're in it, you aren't thinking of that, right? You're just, doing your job and staying strong and being that leader for your soldiers so that they, also have confidence in the mission you're about to execute. I think it's always in the back of your mind that, anything can happen at any second. But you're just out there doing your job is how I felt about it. I don't know if you felt that same way when you're on the road, just like, this is our mission. We're going to go do it. And hopefully nothing goes wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I look back. I was very fortunate because I did do some videos. I did record myself. I did take pictures and things like that. And I don't know, I'm not a big picture guy, but I think I did all those pictures on my little 5 megapixel Kodak camera that I had, right? 5 megapixel. And I look back at that and I don't even recognize myself like that. I don't feel like that's even me. And when I got out, like I had mentioned to you before the show, like I very much had imposter syndrome where I did not want to talk about my military service, wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't have as great of an experience leadership wise as what you had. I didn't have the same cohesion that you had with your platoon and with your company. But on the same grade, I did learn a lot. I did learn a lot about myself and about leadership and what to do, what not to do. And so I do credit the military for that. I was just, I was just wondering after I've never really I haven't spoken to you about this. So it's just, it's amazing to hear, you also acknowledge the danger part too of what we were doing there. And I got to say this, man, ROTC, the San Diego University ROTC program is very, very fortunate to have you. You have been through so much throughout your career, from literally being a first lieutenant downrange in combat, taking care of soldiers, to going to Afghanistan to where you are today. They're very, very fortunate to have you as their leader, like in that entire program. And so I want to talk about that right now. Talk about the ROTC program.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those kind words too.
No, I really mean it, man. That's straight from the heart. Michelle, honestly, you've been through a lot, and there's no doubt in my mind that you're an extremely strong leader. And I have you on the show today because I want you to share a lot of what you just talked about and then talk about the San Diego ROTC program. So right now, currently, what are the scholarships that are being offered?
Yeah, so there's lots of opportunities for scholarships in Army ROTC, more so than Navy ROTC or Air Force ROTC can offer. So the first, big one for high school students is the National Scholarship. And I was fortunate in March to fly back to Fort Knox and sit on the National Scholarship Board and review over 500 applications for national scholarships. But these are 2, 3, or 4 year, full ride scholarships for high school seniors going into their freshman year of college. And what the board is looking for is scholar athlete leader. So it's called the SAL criteria. So it's, students who have high GPAs, part of National Honor Society, that are, varsity sports athletes, team captains, all state, all conference, multiple sports, individual sports count as well for points on the board, such as jujitsu, running marathons or 5Ks, those things that are maybe not as necessarily, team sports. And then the leader portion, Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout, Girl Scouts, clubs, all student body presidents, part or full-time jobs, summer jobs, things like that is what will qualify you and make you competitive for a national scholarship. So that's the first place that anybody coming out of high school should definitely apply for. Even if they're service academy driven, they want to go to West Point or the Naval Academy, still apply for a national scholarship, as a backup plan, because not everyone's going to get into a service academy. And diverting a little bit, even if service academy is your dream, if you don't get in that first year, do ROTC for a year, apply for that national scholarship. And if, you like ROTC, but you still want to go to a service academy, the professor of military science at your university can actually nominate you to go to West Point. So in the last couple of years, I've sent 2 of my cadets to West Point. It's hard to lose them from my program, but ultimately the end game is they're still going to commission into the Army as a second lieutenant, just like our ROTC grads are. And so we're still putting, very high quality officers into the Army that, initially didn't get into West Point. So that's a little known fact about the service academy piece and how ROTC professors of military science can nominate. The next one would be the campus-based scholarships. So if you're already in ROTC or you're just a student thinking about ROTC, that's, high quality. Again, we look at the scholar athlete leader criteria. So we're going to look at your GPA, your college GPA, if you're already in college, and we get money every year to offer scholarships to cadets. New cadets, coming into the program, or ones that are already in that are not contracted and not on scholarships. So that's the campus-based. We also have what's called GRFD, Guaranteed Reserve Force Duty scholarships, and dedicated Army National Guard and dedicated reserve scholarships. So for those, you pretty much lock yourself into not going active duty after graduation and commissioning, but going into the Guard or Reserve, whoever it is that's paying for your scholarships. That's another great opportunity, especially if you want to, stay in a certain location. So like I'm in Southern California, if you want to use your degree in a civilian job full time and do Army kind of on the side, then you accept a National Guard or Reserve scholarship, a GRFD, and then, upon commissioning, you serve in one of those components versus going active duty and being an everyday officer in the Army. Subset of that is what's called the Minuteman Scholarship. So it's also a Guard or Reserve scholarship that requires a nomination from the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, which there's at least one in every state that can nominate you for that. And they have 2, 3, and 4 year scholarships as well. That window just opened up a couple months ago. Same criteria, scholar athlete leader. So do well, obviously, in high school and get involved in lots of activities, and you can be nominated for that. And again, much like GRFD, that locks you into the Guard or Reserve. Army Reserve ambassadors can also nominate you for those scholarships. So there's several of those in each state as well. And then the last type of scholarship would be Green to Gold, and that's for current soldiers and NCOs that are on active duty. They can essentially get an early out of their contract to go complete their degree, whether undergrad or a graduate degree, depending on how much college they already have. There's an active duty option to that, where you would stay active duty, your time would still accumulate, but you would have to pay for college. So it's not necessarily a scholarship. So two types of green to gold scholarships, either fully funded by the Army, or you continue to get your BAH and your entitlements, but go to college full time and still accumulate your time towards retirement. So yeah, that's a lot of scholarship opportunities. But again, for high school students and parents who are looking at how do I pay for my son or daughter's college, national scholarships is definitely where to start.
Yeah, and just want to be clear that everything that Lieutenant Colonel Parlette here is mentioning is different per branch. So the Air Force is going to be offering something different than the Navy and the Coast Guard. Everyone's going to be offering something different. So this is specifically for the Army is what she's talking about. And when you mentioned the GRFD scholarship, is that like the SMP or is that completely different?
Yeah, so SMP is simultaneous membership program, and that's where cadets can essentially enlist into the Guard or Reserve under a commitment with them, but with the stipulation that they're a full-time college student and they will complete their ROTC time. So they're non-deployable when they're on SMP status, but they do drill with their unit 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, usually during the summer. So it really does give them a leg up on other cadets because they are getting that experience in a unit, shadowing a lieutenant, doing lieutenant type work. They're getting paid as an E5 sergeant while, for the drill weekends and their annual training. So a little more monetary incentive as well. So that's just an option. You don't have to be on a GRFD scholarship or any type of scholarship to do the simultaneous membership program. Again, if you just want that extra, experience in a unit to bring back to ROTC and prepare you better to commission and serve, then that is an awesome opportunity. And I think you did SMP as well, right?
Yes, I did. I did SMP. And when you talked about having a leg up, because you have to go through basic training, you have to go through your AIT training, all that stuff. When you're talking about having a leg up, just a real quick funny story. There was a 4-year scholarship cadet that was coming to the university, going to be their first year. And I guess a supply sergeant, back then, supply sergeant was like, here's your stuff, get out of here, and so he handed out these uniforms to all these new cadets. And this one guy was specifically, he was just told to wear it on day one. And I guess he didn't get boots.
Oh, no.
So he showed up with these are the old BDUs, the old battle dress uniform. And he shows up wearing his battle dress uniform, and bless his heart, he decided to wear cowboy boots.
Oh my gosh.
And tuck in his BDUs. So he showed up day one, learning how to stand in formation. And we just looked at his boots like, what the heck is that? Like,
oh, that's great.
He's like, well, I don't know. I was just told to wear my uniform and I'm doing my best. Like,
you told me to wear boots. I wore boots.
I was like, bless your heart. Because I went through basic and I knew how to, wear the uniform. I knew, so anyways, it's just funny.
Great.
Funny story there.
I hope somebody got some pictures of that.
Oh, you know what? I wish that was just, you can imagine what that looked like. It just, I was like, hey, joining the cavalry already, huh? Like,
yeah.
But, so a lot of times I'm talking to folks and they're interested in like getting into cyber tech. And I don't know if you know a whole lot about the opportunities that the cadets can actually transition into when it comes to the branches themselves versus like times past. Are there any new opportunities that you've seen come over the horizon for folks to take advantage of that might be something that they don't really know exists as far as branching career-wise?
Yeah, so, cyber is a fairly new branch, and we actually have a lot of cadets who are interested in branching cyber. Most of them are computer science majors, though that's not a requirement. The way the new branching model works for active duty, I'll talk active duty only right now, is cadets have a preference sheet, and there's 17 branches they can choose from. There's, military police, there's infantry, field artillery, quartermaster, transportation, finance, adjutant general, the list goes on, but cyber is one of those as well. And what they do is they fill out essentially a resume. It's got all their college classes and, a personal statement about their interests and why they want to serve in whatever their top branch choice is. They take a talent assessment battery called a tab that'll tell them kind of what branch they're best fit for, but that doesn't lock them into any branch or necessarily mean that they'll go into that branch, because the Army is going to look at the preference sheet, what you have as your top branch choices. And then they'll do an interview with the actual branch, a Zoom interview, much like this. And if they impress the branch, then chances are the branch will rate them as most preferred, and they have a better opportunity and a chance to get their branch of choice at that point. Whereas when you and I went through our ROTC, it was, yes, we still submitted a branch preference sheet, but everything was kind of determined on how well you did in ROTC and your National Order of Merit score. So you may not end up with active duty, may not end up with the branch you want. Now it's, cadets have a little more say in doing what they ultimately want to do.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. Like I ended up getting into a branch that I really didn't care much for. Honestly, it was ordnance, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. But I was in the Army, so that I got past that big hurdle in itself. And I think it's important for folks out there to fully understand what their options really are, and to make sure you have those conversations before you actually pick.
Yes.
Because it's something that you may be locked into for a while, and something that you're going to be fully doing, for 4 years or more.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this new model, there's a virtual branch orientation website, and every branch has videos about what their branch is about. They have slides that show, what skills they're looking for in that branch. You obviously have your ROTC cadre. You might have family that's been in the military that can tell you about some of these branches. There's a branch orientation day at summer camp, advanced camp in the summer between your junior and senior year, which is the point where you have to make that decision on your preferences. You obviously interact with a lot of cadre from other universities while you're at camp. And so the opportunity to be exposed to other branches, ask them questions. I think it's the sophomore level curriculum. The cadets, one of their assignments is to do a branch overview for their peers. So everyone is assigned a different branch, and they educate their peers on that branch. So there's a lot more educational opportunities out there for cadets to learn about all the branches and what they do, and talk to current officers in that branch, so they can make that educated decision, when it comes time between their junior and senior year to preference those.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. And Michelle, when students join the Army ROTC program, I know what it was like back when I went through it for those 2 years. What can a student or a parent expect when they are part of the Army ROTC program on a daily, weekly basis, as far as their overall culture and set of standards that they would have to follow?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're a student first in ROTC. So obviously you can't commission and continue the program if you don't get your degree. So, your student life is prioritized over ROTC. So, we're really concerned about, making sure you pass all your classes and graduate on time and things like that. But as far as ROTC requirements, every cadet has to take a military history course. They take at some point during their 4 years. They also take one military science class per semester or term, and that's classroom-based instruction, leadership, values, ethics, administrative requirements that they'll see in the Army, counseling and officer evaluation reports and things like that, goal setting. career mapping. So that's the military science course. And then you take one credit military science leadership lab per semester, and that's our actual like tactical training, field training. So that's weapons, that's first aid, that's tactics. So ambushes, defense, patrol base operations, because that's how you'll get evaluated in your leadership development when you go to camp after your junior year. We do one field training exercise every semester. So that usually runs Thursday through a Sunday. And that's when we actually go out to the field and we're applying all of those skills that we've learned throughout the semester and practicing leadership at the squad and platoon level. We also go to the range, the M4 range, once per year. We go to Fort Irwin in February of every year. We take our juniors and seniors, and they actually go out and qualify on table 6, which is the new firing tables for qualification. Beyond that, there's a lot of other opportunities to participate in. There's Ranger Challenge, which is a competitive sport within ROTC. There's color guard opportunities. So you can be on the color guard team and present the colors and flags at different events in the community. Like we do Padres games, we do San Diego Loyal soccer games. We just did like a pistachio festival. I mean, we get calls and requests all the time. Also our own internal ceremonies like the commissioning ceremony, award ceremonies, we use our color guard for. There's a lot of volunteer activities. It really depends on, every program is different, but we do a lot of volunteer activities, fundraising activities, ticket taking at SDSU Aztec football games, handing out water at 5K races. We did a blood drive when there's still an ongoing national shortage. So cadets go donate blood. So we do a lot of other activities that cadets can get involved in.
Yeah, it sounds like a group and a club within itself. I mean, honestly, when I was part of the ROTC program, I joined the Ranger Challenge program, the color guard. I mean, these were just extra things that I wanted to do to be more involved. I wasn't the smartest cat on the block when it came to my GPA, so I relied a lot on my volunteer work and then my extracurricular activities that I would do as well, because I wasn't naturally book smart. I was more persistent when it came to my studies, and I worked really hard. And sometimes people are just that way, where you may not be a great, first time pick it up, don't ever have to study but pass the test type of person, but maybe you're just the type of person who's persistent, enjoys working hard, and ROTC gives you that opportunity to demonstrate that part of you. And that's what I love the most about being part of the ROTC program. And it's funny, you're talking about some of the leadership labs and some of the different clubs like Ranger Challenge and Drill and Ceremony, and it's just funny how some things just don't change. Like that's always been like that, right? And
right. Can
you break it down per year? So freshman year, and I want people to understand that when we're talking about leadership labs, what this is just a regular. It's listed as a regular college course that gives you credits towards graduation. Right. And so you would schedule this class as if you would the rest of your classes. So if you're taking 4 classes, for example, towards your studies, you would add the leadership laboratory to your, your overall transcripts.
Course load. Yeah.
Yeah. Your course load. Right.
Yeah.
And so I understand that the leadership labs are broken down freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, right? And then you also have another leadership lab where everyone kind of comes together.
So no, the leadership lab for San Diego State, it's Mills 96. So that's what's in the course catalog. That's what you register for, whether you're a freshman or a senior.
Okay.
And for our program, and again, every program is a little bit different as far as when their leadership lab is. Some universities have like one super Saturday a month, and that is that leadership lab. And it's an all day Saturday, train everything.
Really?
In the curriculum that day. For us, we do it on, this year we're changing it, but Thursday afternoons is when we've done it. And so all of our freshmen through seniors come out on Thursday afternoons for about 2.5, 3 hours. and they are training on, again, those tactical non-classroom type skills. Usually we coordinate our military science classroom-based classes to work in conjunction with the lab. So if, for example, we're doing land nav on Thursday, Tuesday's class, classroom-based portion is going to be about map reading and compass use and, terrain features and terrain association. It'll be all about, land nav in preparation for Thursday's lab. And then Thursday's lab, freshmen through seniors, again, are out there in the field doing a land nav course, getting their pace count, shooting azimuths with their compass, things like that. For freshmen, sophomores, we pair them up together with a senior because we know it's their first time, for example. But again, everybody is training together.
Yeah, no, that's really good, because back when I went through it, they would have like the 101, the 102s, and the 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s. The 400s were the seniors, the 300s were the juniors, and so on and so forth. And I remember they would have us do like rappelling, and they would have us, tie in knots and things like that. Like you said, land nav, they'd have us do that, just beat and brush through the nearby woods next to the campus. And that was great for recruitment too, because other students would see us doing this, and then we would wear our uniforms. Which do they still have the cadets wear the uniforms like when they're on campus that day?
We do, yeah. For their military science classes, the classroom-based portion, they wear it. And then for Leadership Lab, we're really fortunate to be in a military community here in San Diego. So we almost extensively use Miramar for our training areas, because it's just a huge plot of land that not a lot of folks use. And so we're not on campus for our Leadership Lab, which, doesn't help with recruiting, but it is, prime opportunity for our cadets to not do an ambush and carry around sticks as weapons on a music field on campus, which is what I had to do at University of Portland as well. So it's a lot more realistic. We can use the actual, dummy rifles or the rubber ducks. We can actually have a lot of space to utilize at Miramar. But every campus and ROTC program is different. They may not have access to those resources, and they have to do their training on, an athletic field on campus or a parade field of some sort. So it just helps train our cadets better for what they're going to experience at summer camp between their junior and senior year.
Got to make do with what you got. And it sounds like you guys are very fortunate to be right there, huh?
We are, and we have great relationships with, the Navy and the Marines here to be able to use a lot of different areas. National Guard and Reserve armories, we use those quite a bit as well, especially for our weapons training, radios, field craft, things like that. We use the pool at Miramar or on the Navy base for our combat water survival training. So we're really, really lucky here.
So how big is the battalion down in San Diego State University?
So we have about 90 cadets right now. Obviously, COVID put a damper on our recruiting efforts. We had very strict rules here in 2020. This was actually the first year, even though I've been here going on 3 years now, that I was on campus for an entire year. So we couldn't do the normal recruiting events. We could do like tabling events, the Miramar Air Show, all that in-person stuff. And we were without a recruiting operations officer for quite some time as well. So I think being on campus this year and getting involved in our high schools that were, in person again this year, and having a great recruiting operations officer and a lieutenant who's focused on recruiting, the program's going to grow. So we're already looking at about 30 new cadets for this coming year. So it's going to get a lot bigger, but about 90 right now.
Yeah, I really think that the Army ROTC program is a great opportunity for folks. And it's I don't know why it's not known. All I hear about is the academies. And then when I mention to someone, what about Army ROTC? They're like, well, what's that? And then it just breaks my heart to the fact that people don't know. And honestly, I didn't know either. I was enlisted in the National Guard, and one day my platoon sergeant had mentioned it to me, and it all got kicked off and started when I simply walked up to the Army ROTC office. I just walked up there, didn't know what to expect, and just talked to the secretary and said, "Hey, I'm here to get some information about the ROTC program." And then from there, they sent me to the recruiting officer's, office, and that started the whole thing. And I think that's the first step that you got to take is go to the campus, talk to the professor of military science, talk to the recruiting officer, and get the information, because Lieutenant Colonel Parlette literally just went through a whole list of scholarships that you could be eligible for, to put in for, and you may not even know anything about it. And I think that's the key, is to do your research and to get information on the program. And in your opinion, Michelle, what are the top 3 things that both parents and students need to know about joining and being part of the Army ROTC programs? What are things that you typically see or hear about that parents or students later on go, well, I didn't really know that, or I really didn't understand that very well? What are things that they should know before joining and being part of the ROTC program?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is definitely looking into that national scholarship. Even if you are, hell bent on going to a service academy, not everyone's going to get into a service academy. So actually applying for the national scholarships, the window just opened up June 12th for that national scholarship. So seniors can be looking at that now. If you get accepted and then for a scholarship, and then you get into a service academy, you can always just decline the scholarship. So there's really no harm or foul to applying for a national scholarship. With that too, I would say apply early. So because there are 3 board windows, October, January, and March. So if you don't get picked up for a scholarship in October, your application is still going to carry over to the January board. So you get another look. And if you don't get picked up in that board, then it carries over to the March board. So that's, just a great opportunity for 2, 3, and 4-year scholarships. So you have that, in your back pocket if you don't get another type of, say, financial need-based scholarship, or if you don't get into a service academy, if that's what you're trying to pursue. I would say definitely apply to the schools that you list on your national scholarship application. I don't know how many times I've seen a high school student get selected for a 4-year scholarship, but didn't apply to the university that they have listed that they got a scholarship for. And there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. So they either have to go to a different university and transfer their scholarship. A lot of them miss the deadline. So pay attention to the deadlines for the university you're applying to, so that if you do get offered a scholarship and get accepted to the university, you can actually, take that scholarship. Just to dispel like a rumor, maybe concerns that parents have, your son or daughter is not, enlisting into the Army and going to basic training. Obviously, there's a piece like you did with simultaneous membership program where you did go to basic training, but joining ROTC, yes, you do sign a contract, but you're still just a college student doing, ROTC classes on the side, essentially, and any other activities you want to get involved in. But you can still join fraternities and sororities and play sports, intramurals, or collegiate level sports. You could still go to parties. You can still have fun, which is, maybe not what you'll see at the service academy level for sure. So you're still, just a student. And there's no, hazing or rite of passage or anything crazy like that. You are a student. You're going to ROTC classes. You're going to sit in a classroom. You're going to go out to the field, and train and just develop your leadership skills. So I think a lot of parents don't understand. They're like, oh my God, you're, enlisting, you're going to go to basic training and go off to war. Well, no, you're locked into college.
Right.
So that's one thing to, I guess, dispel. And then kind of like you said, if you think you're interested at all in ROTC, go to the university you're looking at and see if they have an ROTC program. There's 273 programs nationwide, including American Samoa and Puerto Rico and Guam. But But go to their website, find their ROTC information. There'll be contact info there for the recruiting operations officer. You can jump on a Zoom call with them. You can do a telephonic. If you're in the local area, go pay them a visit, and they can tell you all of the ins and outs about what you need to join the program. With that, you don't have to contract immediately. You don't have to commit to it. You can just be a college student and enroll in ROTC classes. It's open enrollment until it gets to the junior and senior level classes, but you can take leadership lab. You can take military science 101. You can take military history, get involved, as much as you want. And if you then decide, yeah, this is definitely something I want to do and I want to stay in the program, then you can look at contracting and meeting all the requirements to contract. But you can be just, again, a regular college student. It's called a participating cadet or an enrolled cadet without being contracted and having any level of commitment to the service afterwards. So that's a really good thing. But reach out to the recruiting operations officer, do your research online.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put it down in the show notes.
Yeah.
Everything that you mentioned today, it's, for people to reference. I always do that. Yeah, actually, what you mentioned, the civilians that show up for the leadership labs, like that was me. Like, so before I went SMP, that's what I did. Before I committed, I showed up to the leadership labs and, hey, is this thing for me or not? And it was very welcoming, and I enjoyed being around the other cadets. And the next year I went ahead and jumped and did the SMP, the simultaneous membership program, and the rest is history. And something that you mentioned, which kind of made me grin and smile about, was you talked about the service academies. And I want to share a story. I had a really good buddy of mine. He is a service academy graduate. To keep it very, very general, I'm not going to say which, so he doesn't know who I'm talking about. But one day we were standing there. It was our first job after we both separated from the military. We're standing there in our current employment in a civilian side. And I asked him, I said, so are you glad you went to a service academy? He's like, not really. And I was like, why? He goes, because we're both standing right here next to each other. And we have the same job. And he's like, you had the experiences of going to college, going to basketball games, football games, and really just enjoying yourself, and had the whole college experience. And I went to an academy where everything was regimented, very strict, and not to poo-poo on the academies, but there is a difference there, and when you're going to San Diego State University versus a West Point or an Air Force Academy, it may not be for everyone. And so really, really consider Army ROTC when you're looking at your options for the future. And like Michelle said, even if you are a civilian and you're currently taking classes, whether it be San Diego State or wherever you're at, you can sign up for leadership laboratory classes, go to class, you get credits for that class, and just see if this gels with you, if this is your thing, if this is something you might want to get more involved in, because you never know. Even when I was a gold bar recruiter for my university for about 3 months, I had a lot of civilians that would literally just walk up and say, hey, I want to sign up for your leadership labs. And then we would go rappel or do land nav, and we teach them stuff. And they'd be like, this is really cool. How do I get a scholarship? How do I become part of the family? And next thing you know, they're in boots, and then they go and do their time in the military. And it's, to me, like, the reason I got commissioned was because my old man was 20-year, Army, and got out as an E8, old crusty E8, and was drafted in 71. And it wasn't enough for me to just be enlisted. I wanted to take it to the next level, and I thought that it would be an honor to serve as an officer in the United States military. And it absolutely was. And I had great opportunities to work with people like you, Michelle. And it's awesome to see you after 18 years almost, right?
Yes.
And I appreciate you being on the podcast and talking about ROTC.
There's a couple more things I want to mention. You talked about the service academy and being very, rigid and structured. They're going to tell you when to eat. They're going to tell you when to study. They're going to tell you when to turn lights out, things like that. And that's why, applying for a national scholarship simultaneously with applying to service academy is important, because you might end up going there and then you don't like it. Right. And then you come back to regular college, and and join ROTC, and you can still meet your ultimate goal if commissioning is what you want to do. But also, if you're a sophomore getting ready to go into your junior year in college, so you already have classes and you think it's too late, it's not. You can still join ROTC, and we'll send you to basic camp that summer between your sophomore and junior year. It's not basic training, it's basic camp at Fort Knox. And that camp essentially makes up for that first 2 years of ROTC that you missed. So your freshman and sophomore year, when you weren't taking ROTC classes, it's not too late. So that's good to know for college students. Another thing is, with Air Force and Navy ROTC, you have to get a degree in certain things. With Army ROTC, you can get your degree in anything you want, right? I got a degree in elementary education when I was going through ROTC, which has been very helpful now.
Yeah.
But journalism, nursing, engineering, computer science, it's completely wide open. Theater production. I have a cadet right now that's studying television production. So you can literally study anything you want. And again, on a scholarship, it's fully paid for, either full tuition and fees or room and board. And you get to choose which one, room and board or tuition and fees. And a lot of colleges for ROTC students will kick in room and board. And so now you're going to college completely for free. You're not paying room and board or tuition and fees. So it's a great deal, but you do need to do your research to see what colleges offer that. Otherwise, it is going to be, you're going to pick whatever's most expensive, whether it's room and board or tuition and fees. Includes out of state as well, which can be significantly higher. So I just want to touch on those few things.
No, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I always tell people in the same sense that the best time to look for a job is when you have a job. And it's also a great time when you're talking about these scholarships. It's even if you're accepted into an academy and you have a job, I guess you're going to be going to the academy. It's a great time for you to also have that lateral mobility to move to a regular college, but still stay on that same path to get. So don't put just one iron in the fire, put several irons in the fire, because the best place to be in life is to have lateral movement, to say, you know what, this isn't for me. I think I'm going to go over here. And that's because there's a lot of people that are stuck. There's a lot of people in life that are stuck. They're stuck in their job. They're stuck in their situations, and definitely got to leave your options open, because things change, so that's really, really, really great advice.
Great to have options. If you want a service academy, apply to every service academy. Don't limit yourself to just West Point because your dad went to West Point. Apply to Naval Academy, apply to Air Force Academy, apply for national scholarships, apply for Navy and Air Force scholarships. So when the time comes, you have all this on the table to say, then you really got to narrow down your research to say, what is it I really want? But at least you have those options.
Yeah, totally. That's really, really great advice, actually. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't cover as far as ROTC? We covered the branches, we covered the scholarships, we covered the alternative routes. I know there's a lot of things that have come up recently, as of recent times that weren't around when I was in. Is there anything else that we didn't quite cover?
There's a lot we didn't cover. There's so much, because it is such a great opportunity.
Well, I didn't know about the whole the Navy requiring you to get certain degrees. I didn't know that. Like, I thought that you could, just like Army, because what you mentioned was there was other cadets that graduated with me that like one was in theater and she became an Army officer. Like, it's just, I thought all the branches were the same way, but I didn't know that it was specific.
I did too. And then I found out, you have to study like aerospace engineering, and
to get a certain branch in other.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Just talking about some of the other benefits, though. Once you're contracted, whether you're on a scholarship or not, you get a stipend every month of $420 a month for 10 months. So during the academic year. And then you also get a book stipend. So you get $1,200 a year, $600 every semester to pay for books. So, being contracted, not even on a scholarship, you're still going to get paid a certain amount. Just some of the other opportunities I just want to mention too, like over the summers, Project Global Officer is, I think they probably had COLP when you were a cadet, the Cultural Understanding and Language Proficiency Program. Well, that's
Oh,
went away.
yes.
Now there's Project Go. So 10 weeks over the summer, you can study a strategic language for free. You get the college credit for that. You get additional accessions points for your National Order of Merit score. And it's offered at several universities across the US. And again, it's fully funded. They're going to pay to house you in the dorms. They're going to pay for that cultural training, cultural and language training. They're going to pay for the testing. And so it's just another opportunity for ROTC cadets. And that's open to Army, Navy, and Air Force Marine cadets and midshipmen. You also have the opportunity over the summers to go to airborne school, to air assault school, to master fitness trainer, to mountain warfare, to sapper leader course. I mean, there's tons of internships that you can apply for. And to be competitive for those, obviously you have to be a good cadet. Right. So getting good grades, being involved in the program, like you said, you were, in Color Guard and Ranger Challenge, and you participated in those volunteer opportunities and different things. And you did well on your physical fitness test. So those, as a cadet myself, I went to airborne one year and I went to air assault another year. Once you get into the military, depending on what unit you go into, you may not get that opportunity ever again.
Right.
It's pretty competitive. So to go as a cadet because you've been a great cadet and you're competitive for that, that's just one more opportunity. And then there's cadet troop leadership training, CTLT. During the summer of your junior year after camp, you can go embed with an active duty Army unit. You can go to Hawaii, you can go to Germany. I had a cadet last year who went to Italy, for 30 to 40 days. And you're just shadowing, a unit and a lieutenant and learning about the different branches before you actually have to make that branch choice. Go around and talk to the military intelligence officer in the S2 shop, talk to the adjutant general officer in the S1 shop, and the quartermaster logistics captain in the S4 shop, and see if that's really what you want to do, because you get to see them do it on a day-to-day basis for, 30 to 45 days. So another just great opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to get to that about the airborne air assault CTLT thing. I had completely forgotten about that as well. I actually took advantage of CTLT, the cadet troop leadership training, and they sent me to Germany. Unfortunately, nice. The unit, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, the unit they sent me to was deployed. The entire base was deployed.
Oh no.
So I sat with the rear detachment for 30 days, which wasn't bad because there was a group of us. We all went and explored Germany and had a great time there. Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned, though, I passed up airborne to go to CTLT, and I never got that chance to do that again. I thought airborne, I'll do that later. I'll do that. That'll be another time, right? And you came out as a second lieutenant, double stacked. So airborne air assault, which was, that's really great that you did that. I wish I had done that instead. And now, for my situation, I was a simultaneous membership cadet. Mm-hmm. I also scored an on-campus scholarship while I was in ROTC, where they paid for my room and board. So I was literally, at the time, my National Guard unit was paying 100% of my tuition. I was getting paid to go to my drills. And then I also got this room and board scholarship because I was so involved with Ranger Challenge Color Guard. I was, motivated, showing them that I was really interested in doing this. Is something like that still available as well?
I'd have to ask my recruiting operations officer because you were on a scholarship with the Guard.
Yeah. Well, it was SMP. Well, it was non-scholarship.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, non-scholarship, but I was getting my tuition paid through the state.
Okay. Yeah. So with certain Guard Reserve scholarships, you can use like your GI Bill if you're eligible for that. You can use your like tuition assistance. There's other benefits that each state offers, and still be eligible for a campus-based scholarship. but
Yeah.
I don't know all the ins and outs details of that. My recruiting operations officer definitely would, because he goes to school for that.
Yeah. No, listen,
But yeah, you got a sweet deal.
anything you send me as far as references, I'll put all that stuff down in the show notes, so
Okay.
that anyone listening to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll just go into the description portion. You'll see every single link down there. If you're listening to this on a podcast, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, scroll down to the bottom. You'll see all that information down there, as well as how to contact Lieutenant Colonel Parlette as well.
Perfect.
So before we finish up the episode here, Michelle, I know that that your doggy is a big part of your life,
Her ears
right?
perked up.
And by
Yeah.
the way, like back in the day when Michelle and I were stationed in Hawaii, we with a couple other lieutenants would go surfing. We spent a lot of time out surfing, right?
Yes.
Yes, I
Best
know.
times.
Do you still surf in San Diego?
I went once. The water's too cold for me. I got way too spoiled in Hawaii. I hate wearing a wetsuit. So
It's just not the same, right? Because I did it in
He's
New
not.
Jersey. I saw my uncle who passed away. I still have his board. When I was in New Jersey, I actually paddled out, and it was so rough and it was so cold. And I was like, this isn't Hawaii.
Dirty. Yeah, you can't
Dirty.
see to the bottom. It's dark.
Right. So I feel you on that one right there. But yeah, so tell us about about your dog before we end the show, because I know she's a
Okay.
big part of your life, right?
Yes, this is her. This is Peanut. And I adopted her from a shelter at Fort Hood a few years ago, 2015, I believe it was, maybe 16. But she was the Dogs on Deployment Military Pet of the Year and mascot in 2018. So, huge prize package and photo shoots for their marketing materials and paintings of her. And I have Cuddle Clone. It's a stuffed replica of her. I mean, this is all part of the prize package, a year's supply of food, which I donated back to a Chihuahua rescue shelter in Texas. But Dogs on Deployment, not a lot of folks know about, but it's a 501c3 national nonprofit started by two service members, a Marine and Navy officer. And they had a dog named JD back in 2011. She was going to Quantico for school. He was deploying, and they had nowhere to take JD. No family members were available. Friends didn't want to, deal with the hassle of having a dog. So they were kind of on the verge of like, what do we do? Do we give JD up to a shelter? Do we, obviously didn't want to abandon him, on the street or anything, but, he's part of the family. And so they thought, well, this probably isn't isolated to just us. There's a lot of military members out there and even veterans that, have to go away for training or deployment, and they don't have somewhere to take their pet. So they started Dogs on Deployment, and it's essentially a network of volunteer boarders for all pets, even though it's called Dogs on Deployment. It's birds, it's reptiles, it's cats, it's, rodents, anything. But these boarders go on and register and say what they're willing to accept, just cats or just dogs or just small dogs. And then service members, if they get called to basic training or deployment or sea duty, they can then apply to link up with a boarder. There's a contract, a registration requirement, but they can go on and browse boarders in their area, or if they're willing to travel or fly their pet, to another state for when they're away. It's completely free. You link up with, you find a boarder online that you're, meets the requirements. You go do a meet and greet to make sure it's going to work out okay. You sign a contract, with all the stipulations of, if my dog requires vet care, notify me if it's over 500 before you authorize it, things like that. The feeding schedule, the type of food, who's going to buy the food, reimbursement, all of that. But it saves them on, dumping the dog or pet somewhere, or leaving it with a family member who has, enough stress in their life to take on an additional responsibility. So it's really great. When I deployed to Kuwait, my parents had just moved to Hawaii and they were really the only ones that could watch her. But as you know, there's a lot of strict requirements getting pets to Hawaii and avoiding the quarantine process. And it's pretty lengthy. So that wasn't an option. And so I discovered Dogs on Deployment. I found an awesome boarder in Georgetown, Texas, just outside of Fort Hood, who took Peanut in for about 5 months. Again, completely free. Obviously, you can offer to pay them, but they took awesome care of her. And it was just peace of mind for me knowing she was taken care of. I got photos, I got videos all the time of her, talked to her on like FaceTime. So it's just a great organization. They also have a financial assistance arm if service members are having problems with paying for emergency vet care, or say they're PCSing overseas and there's a lot of, high travel costs, especially to put bigger dogs on planes. A lot of expenses associated with that. And if they can't afford that, then you can apply for a pet chit is what they call it. It's a financial assistance for those types of expenses. There's free spay and neuter programs, partnerships in different areas across the U.S. There's, like I said, the emergency vet care, microchipping, all of this free to service members, veterans. So it's just a great program, and we're happy to be part of it. We're happy to have been the military pet of the year and mascot in 2018. So Peanut's pretty special. I think one day upon retirement, I'll write a book or series of children's books about her and her travels, because she's traveled all over Europe. She's traveled all over the States. She's going to Hawaii with me in December just for vacation.
How long have you had Peanut?
I think it's 2016. It was after one of my deployments. So
wow,
6 years, and she's estimated 8 right now. Not quite sure how old she is exactly or what her first 2 years of life were like, but she's
right.
Pretty amazing. I hated Chihuahuas my entire life, like yappy, irritating, ankle biting dogs. And I met one in Italy when I was stationed there that was complete opposite of that. Fell in love with her. It was another service member's dog named Maya. And I was like, well, I'll never find a Chihuahua like that. But I lucked out. She's calm. She's chill. She's lovable. She's very smart, knows a lot of tricks. She loves everybody. Yeah. Kids will be petting her and pulling on her, and she just sits there like, all right, Mom.
I know so many people that develop such a special connection with an animal throughout their life. I mean, there's always that one or two that you just never forget. And I've had a couple in my life. I've had 2 dogs, both named Ranger. I don't know if you remember, I had a dog when I was in Ranger, and he was a black Labrador. He was a black lab / pit bull. And he passed away, but a smart dog, really intelligent dog. And then I had another Ranger when I was just a little kid. And it was just so weird how they both had the same name, but they had the same temperament. And you don't find connections like that in animals like that. So I can certainly understand, how, she's a part of your family.
Yeah. She's pretty amazing. She goes everywhere with me, everywhere.
So anyone out there that's interested in contacting you, Lieutenant Colonel Parlette, what's the best way for them to contact you?
My email is probably best, and that's mparlette@sdsu.edu. Okay. You can just Google San Diego State Army ROTC. That'll take you to our kind of homepage. And there's a cadre tab, and it's got all my cadre with their pictures, with their emails, with their phone numbers listed on that page. Even if you're thinking about going to Notre Dame and haven't, been able to contact someone in the ROTC department, for example, you can contact any ROTC department, and they can tell you, what ROTC is all about, what's required to join the program, to actually contract and get your benefits started. They can tell you about national scholarships, but my recruiting operations officer and anybody on my team is open to talking to you regardless of where you want to attend college.
Awesome. And just to round out the episode, Lieutenant Colonel Parlette, is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience out there, or finish out with just summarizing this entire this entire conversation that we had?
I think the biggest thing is, like we talked about, opportunities. Like, certainly get out there, get involved, do a good job, ask questions, and apply for any and everything you possibly can. There's, no fee to apply for West Point. There's no fee to apply for a national scholarship. So just get out there and do it, and, see what your opportunities are, months from now, as far as universities, as far as, service academies, ROTC, check them all out, right? Just educate yourself so that what every program is about and what's going to be the best fit for you.
Yes. Have
And
those
start
conversations.
early.
Yes. Have those conversations. Start early. So much great advice today, Michelle. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast today, but highlighting a lot of what ROTC has to offer. I think it's a great opportunity for folks out there. It's very unfortunate that not a lot of people know much about it. But it's something that I've been looking to cover, and it's perfect that you are in the position that you're at as a professor of military science, and I have the connection with you, having worked with you in the past. You literally were there at the beginning of my short military career that was very adventurous, having deployed right off the bat. I got to tell you this before we end the show, and I am extremely proud of you and where you are today. Like I said before, I think San Diego State University is extremely, extremely lucky to have someone of your caliber working for them. And I appreciate over the years you staying in contact with me. It means the world to me. I really don't talk to a whole lot of people that I worked with in the military. It's just over the years moving around, and somehow we managed to connect on LinkedIn, connect on Facebook, and still keep in touch. So I think that's absolutely awesome. And thank you for being a part of the episode today.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud of you too, even though it was a short stint. You said in the military, it was a very important stint. And, it was just really a pleasure to serve with you for the time that we did. And I'm thankful that we were able to stay in contact as well. You've always been a really good friend, and we always joke around and have fun and surf. And hopefully we'll get to do that again someday. If you ever get back to Hawaii, please, you're welcome to come on over, and I'll be retired there, maybe in a year, maybe in 3 years. We'll see. But
we'll try to paddle out.
That's right.
We'll try to paddle out or listen to some Hawaiian reggae, right?
That's right. But so proud of you with, what you've done in your career as well in this podcast, and getting, the word out on a variety of different topics. I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts in the future, now that I know what a podcast is. But great job with the morning formation and all that you've done in your life, and all the successes you've had, and for your service as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love podcasting mainly because when I started listening to it, I started developing sort of an intense relationship with the speakers, when it came to listening to what they were actually saying. And it took my visual away and just made me focus on the words specifically. So, that's why I did that. And no, it's an honor to have you on the show. And for everyone else out there, please take the advice that Lieutenant Colonel Parlette talked about. If you have kids in your family, whether they're nieces, nephews, or they're your own kids, or maybe they're just the neighborhood kids, and they're going to be graduating high school soon, you want to put them on the right path, give them the right azimuth, the right direction to head in. ROTC is a great way to go. You're literally talking to two people that utilize that program to get forward in their own careers. Michelle's done 18 years or 20 years so far?
21.
Wow. 21 years. 21 years. If I was still in, I would have 18 years in the military right now, which is hard to believe. Life goes by so fast. Please have them take a look, have them have the conversations with the recruiting officers at their local universities that have ROTC. Contact Lieutenant Colonel Parlette, contact San Diego State University ROTC program if that's what you're interested in. Get them out there and get them headed in the right direction, folks. And as far as the morning formation and Lieutenant Colonel Parlette, we want you to stay tuned, stay focused, and stay motivated. Warriors, all out. You've been listening to the Morning Formation Podcast. I hope you found today's materials helpful and of value to your current situation. You can connect with me on Instagram at _morning_formation
_podcast, or you can connect with me via email at theformationpodcaster@gmail.com. Also, I would like to thank my partners at Act Now Education for their support. Authenticity, community, and trusted is what you can expect from all members of the Act Now Education team. You can link up with them today and learn about some new, free educational resources on their Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or at their website, actnoweducation.com. Whether today's show took you back to a nostalgic time or helped you think about tomorrow, thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe and stay motivated. Warriors, fall out.